So I think that's the biggest thing is not assuming ag is ag and identifying the variety of markets that are within that pretty broad segment.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Wisenetix Podcast episode. I'm really glad to have here with me today Shannon Hughes. Shannon is Director of Media, Digital and Media Strategy within Lessing-Flynn. Shannon is going to share a lot of cool insights with us today. I'm sure you guys will take a lot of advantage of what she has to teach us. Shannon, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Shannon, the way we like to start our episodes here is, learning a little bit more about our guest speakers. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of your background and who is Shannon?
Yeah, you bet. Well, I have served my entire career in the ad agency space. So kind of approaching that over a decade, decently number of years. But I've been with Lessing-Flynn for 9 years. My entire focus throughout my career has been a love and passion for paid media. But interestingly, I do have some background on the account side as well. I dabbled in that not only at Lessing-Flynn, but a prior agency I was at. I feel like that kind of gives me a little bit of a better perspective of the actual client services, needs, billing, all of those things that are really integral for an agency to run. I got started at Iowa State. I have a dual degree in marketing and advertising, not actually from the Iowa area, left the Kansas City area to go up to a colder climate for some reason to get my degree up there. And then ended up sticking around, which, led me to the introduction of my husband. And we now have 2 tiny humans. So it has been just a blessing to be in the area and surrounded by ag. The agencies I've worked at have really been rooted and founded with agriculture clients. And so it's really great not only to support those clients, but really be entrenched in an environment that is really truly supportive of it.
Awesome. Yeah, the accounting perspective always help you putting yourself in the shoes of customers and other things that happen around the media choices you do. So that's really cool, and it's nice to see because a lot of people that we interview here that join the podcast, they actually start with technical background. Technical, I mean ag-related technical background, and then they move to communication and marketing. But it's always good to have people like yourself bringing more experience and background on like communication based background basically. And Shannon, so you've been traveling a little bit around the US, changed places, went to study in a different state. So throughout your journey, what would you highlight as your top 3 experiences in life, professionally or personal, and what did you learn from those experiences?
Yeah. So I did move around growing up quite a bit. And so I think when you are thrown into that at a young age or throughout your adolescence, you kind of quickly learn how to be adaptable. And so I think, that's truly an experience that is helpful personally, but also very much professionally, especially in the area of client services. Being adaptable is important. I think another experience that has been very humbling is developing our digital and media communications team and all the skill sets and work that we complete for our clients. That was not an area of the business that was an offering when I joined the team that long ago at the scale it is today. And that also led me into a role on our agency's leadership team, all of which, has taught me a lot about management just as much as it is technical work. And so I really appreciate the balance. And then, of course, I think just becoming a mom, that's just an experience that you really can't discount and has even, led me into maybe more patience across the board, which is also good.
That's almost every father and mother. They highlight this one as the top experiences, which is, I believe it makes sense. I'm not there yet, but soon I'll probably be discovering how it is.
Yeah.
And Shannon, so you work with communication, paid media, digital media. Uh, Now, how would you? I'm not sure, like, what is, the profession and what your parents do, but like, how would they describe what you do today?
They would probably just say I buy advertising or buy ads for brands, and I do their social media and I make their websites, which in a high summarized version isn't too far off. But they think of it like billboards and TV, more traditional style advertising, not really understanding the complexity that happens in digital. I certainly do not know how to code for websites, so there's just some of those funny things that are probably assumed knowledge base. But overall, I guess when they highlight it, they kind of hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. It's not a bad answer. Good.
Yeah.
And so that's basically the question that we use to, start talking about business, about communication and marketing. And you've had this extensive experience in the industry in communication, and if I understood well, always rooted in the ag industry, right? Communication around the ag. What would you highlight as key insights that you've learned through the past years, navigating the complexities of doing marketing and communications in the agricultural industry?
I think, and this is going to sound kind of like a no duh, but really understanding your market, their sales channel, and the products. I think, generally speaking, when you partner with a lot of different advertising partners and services, they look at agriculture as one market. And the reality is that is not the case. You talk about equipment sales, even equipment in like hay and forage versus row crop. All of those things are so different. Their sales channels are different. Their dealer support network all looks different. And so, really making sure that you understand the intricacies of your client, what their actual end user looks like. And that can be like variable based off of not only they're a row crop farmer versus, they're um, growing forage for beef cattle, right? Like those are very different, but that could also be like number of acres or variety of row crop. And understanding that you can get really targeted with ag, because that's information that farmers decently shell out because they want more accurate offerings. So I think that's the biggest thing, is not assuming ag is ag and identifying the variety of markets that are within that pretty broad segment.
Absolutely. This is something we've been learning also. Again, Wisenetix is a brand that we launched like in 2022, but we've been in the market doing content, technical content for, people in the ag, which actually was people in the swine industry before,
Yep.
for over, I think, 12 years now. And this is something we learned as we expanded to other industries also, right?
Yeah.
We had a mature business model that we understood, okay, this is effective, like how we communicate using podcasts and everything. But as we moved, like the first industry we tried after swine was poultry, which there's a lot of similarities. But then when you go to ruminants and dairy, it changes already. Like we're talking, of course, I don't know about, animal protein production or livestock.
Yeah.
When you go to ruminants, it's totally different. You don't have the integrators you have when you're in the swine or poultry industry. It's much more fragmented. And when you go to beef, it's even more different. So even
Yeah.
within animal production, it's really different. When you go to crops or pet food, every one of those industries is a different universe with their specific requirements and characteristics. So that's something really important, and something I see like, okay, we are ag focused, but like you need to be
Yeah.
niched within the niche, right? You need to have extra layers of understanding, to understand those specific markets.
And I think that's an expectation of our farmers, right? Like they're not going to want to partner with a brand or a product or a service if you don't understand who they are and what they do and how they contribute, that's a big frustration point for this audience because they are so oftentimes lumped into lots of buckets that are not reflective of what they do. And what they do is personal to them. And so they take it personally, and I can't blame them.
You mentioned you've been working in Lessing-Flynn for the past 9 years, more or less, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Lessing-Flynn, as we discussed before, is a very traditional agency. You guys have been in the market for over 100 years, right? And I wonder, like, how this heritage influences your work, because it's like a traditional
Yeah.
a traditional agency, at least if you think in a perspective of time, right? You've been here for a while. How this heritage influence your work, especially in the digital arena, and with this ever changing with the ever changing technological aspects in the landscape.
Yeah, you bet. So we were founded in 1907, and we are still fourth generation family owned. And so when I think about heritage for Lessing-Flynn, I certainly think about those presidents and CEOs of our business and their adaptability and agility. Not a lot of businesses last for over 100 years, nonetheless, an ad agency. And so, when I go up to our leadership, to our CEO, to our VP, and say, hey, I would like to invest in this area or dive in and discover what opportunities are here, or I'd like to bring this new service, they are always, ready to support and say, heck yes, let's do it. And I think that is the interesting aspect of the heritage, right? Having really invested leaders in the business who are wanting to grow with the industry instead of staying stagnant. We are a full service agency too. And so making sure that, all of our services are supporting one another to create that comprehensive strategic marketing approach to really help our clients see movement and trajectory, whether that is in the brand awareness space, whether that's direct number or quantity of equipment sales, or whether that is just becoming the number one market leader, right? There's lots of things that marketing contributes to. And so we want to make sure that we are contributing in all the spaces we need to really move that needle. So I think, that's what I really think of when I think of heritage with Lessing-Flynn.
Looks like you're in the right spot then, because one of your experiences you mentioned is adaptability or flexibility.
Yep.
Looks like that's something cultural in in your business culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Our agency is always kind of challenging each other to say, what is existing and works well that we need to continue to do, and then what do we need to adapt, grow into, and how do we kind of be that resource for our clients, so they feel like they don't have to ingest the 45 articles that come out every day on X topic. And they can rely on us to really consolidate that information and provide good recommendations.
I wanna focus a little bit on this specific aspect, okay, of your culture, or your business culture, adaptability. We've been seeing, and of course, that's that's always like a conversation starter. Okay, the world is changing. It was the internet, now it's AI, and all of that, all those changes. Okay, I don't know, for the past 30 years, probably the changes have been happening more and faster,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're working with digital and media strategy, which is probably one of the things that has witnessed most of these changes, right?
Yeah.
How do you guys balance between adopting new trends, new media options, new things that come to the market and are attractive and new as new stuff are, versus staying consistent to the established strategies that you have?
It's certainly a delicate dance and balance. I mean, I'd be lying if there wasn't pockets in my career where I felt like I was drinking, from a fire hose. And, now is a great example of that with the evolution of generative AI. I would have said probably 5 to 6 years ago for the B2B space, that was where we were at with all things programmatic. And, probably 10 to 12 years ago, specifically in ag, that was just our traditional publishers coming out with more digital offerings, and so when I think back over 10 years ago, our media buys were primarily print. And now I would say that print is the one of the smaller components of our media buys because the quality of data is getting better. As far as the balance goes, really what I always try and root everyone back to is what are we trying to accomplish? And does that medium, tactic, platform get us to that? Meaning, are we wanting to establish brand awareness? Are we looking for direct leads? What are we really trying to do? And does that tactic support it? So a lot of times, clients might say, hey, I'm really hungry to better understand what's happening in the connected TV space. Well, it kind of goes back to intrinsically understanding what the purpose of video is in advertising and recognizing that that is a brand awareness, brand visibility tactic. You're not going to directly generate or correlate leads back to a connected TV campaign. So if the client is expecting leads, but they're interested in connected TV, there's a misalignment. And so it's really having the conversation with the client to say, what is really your goal? And foundationally, what does this tactic serve? And do those things line up? And that helps you better understand, are we starting to integrate some of the traditional things that we know works to get us to that goal? But are we also baking in some of the newer tactics and kind of letting them battle it out or duke themselves out in that recommendation to say, wow, we really had this learning from this campaign because we integrated a couple new tactics. We kept foundationally what we also know works, and then we leverage those results in analytics for the next recommendation that aims to achieve the same goal.
Yeah, sometimes it's all about getting to the right questions, right, and simple questions that sometimes we just forget to ask.
Yep.
Right, what do I want to accomplish with that? And is this getting me closer to where I want to be? Although they are simple and essential, sometimes it's something that we don't give the attention they should have, right? uh,
Yep.
you mentioned also about the implementation of multiple different types of marketing tactics. Today you can most every company, I would say, they have a CRM where they have all the information of their customers. They work with marketing campaigns, I don't know, email marketing campaigns. They choose specific partnerships in events or whatever. How to make sure you are integrating all of those tactics under like one solid strategy, and how do you ensure that you're having a seamless communication to maximize the impact of your customer?
Yeah. Great question. I think when we look at it from a top down approach, it's sometimes as simple as reminding our clients that everyone is a consumer and that it takes multiple touch points in different ways to move the needle. You can't be an invisible brand and randomly shoot them an email and expect them to activate, right? And so we do annual planning for most of our clients. And the reason we want to look at things in a 12-month window, while still allowing for a lot of flexibility as the year evolves, because there are always little wrenches that get thrown, good or bad. And by looking at it in that 12-month window, we can start to say and look at seasonality. When audience A needs this type of message because this impacts their operation at that time. And when you can look at things from a seasonality perspective, you can look at year over year analytics, you can look at the full tactic base of what you're doing. You can kind of start to put all of those puzzle pieces together to make that right picture. Again, to try and achieve, like, what are those primary goals? What are we really going after this year? How are we evaluating success? How are your stakeholders evaluating success? What are we responsible for in marketing? And so then you can really analyze and say, hey, did the picture we tried to draw did all the puzzle pieces we put together end up actually resulting in the outcome we wanted? And then that's where you get to kind of finesse year over year to say yes for this, and kind of for this, maybe no for that, and being a little bit risk averse to understand that not everything's going to have the exact outcome you want, but you have to start to try and build that picture, so that over time you have a lot of informed decisions, which therefore become your traditional efforts, and then gives you the pockets and appetite to try new things.
Yeah, this is something that two things that I took from your answer now. First, understanding this what success means, right, to the stakeholders. To uh, this is something we always try to apply. Understand, okay, where our customers want to get, and lots of times it doesn't involve only our efforts, right? Because you guys are a full service agency. You plan like you're the starter of the strategy, and the you create the pillars and the solid base for the whole communication strategy. We are in the end of the we are one of those possibilities of touch points you can have with customers, right? And when we start a conversation with a customer, we want to understand what success means to them, so we can also align and be more flexible on our deliveries, so we can get closer to their results. I always say, like, hey, the investing on a podcast, for example, it doesn't mean like you're going to be on a podcast and the following day someone will call you and say, hey, I want to buy all your products because I heard on a podcast that you're really good. No, you're another very important, in our opinion, platform for you to touch bases with your customer. But that doesn't mean you can rely all of your efforts on one thing. I always say, like, hey, this is these saying ag in general, but of course there are the particularities, as we mentioned. But the ag industry in general is an industry that I see with a huge appeal for face-to-face interactions, right? Sometimes there are not that many decision makers, depending on which industry we're talking about, and the reality is you need to be in the front of your customer. If it's with your sales team on trade shows, so all of those touch points, they will contribute. So at the end, when your customer makes a decision, they will use all those touch points as a resource of knowledge and information to make a wiser decision, right? So I see this as something very valuable, and something, although we are in the end of the communication pipeline, let's say, we always try to adapt that so we can also help customers. So it's pretty interesting how you guys see that also.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it. That people are going to do their research, right? Like you don't hear an ad and decide, even outside of ag, right? As just a consumer of, I don't know, insert any product, you don't see one ad and say, hey, I'm gonna go spend my money there. Especially on big ticket or big impact items. You do your research. You got to kind of hear it multiple times. You might be Googling them. Then you might reach out to your actual dealer or your distributor, whatever that looks like. You're going to ask them a lot of questions, and they're equally responsible for representing the brand, the product, understanding the brand and product. So a lot of that effort too comes into connecting our sales team with the marketing efforts. I think there's always a lot of maybe potential strife that can happen there. You feel like sales is going after one thing and marketing is going after another. So really making sure that you have an intentional like checkpoints or cross points between sales and marketing so that everyone feels like they have what they need. So when that customer is ready to research X, reach out to dealer Y, they're getting that brand experience that converts them, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Those departments, they should be like not exactly tied to each other, but they should have a transparent connection and conversation, because like marketing is here at the end of every business. We want to have profit at the end, so market should provide the tools so the sales team can act in the right time with the right tools, and be closer to the success.
Spot on. Yep.
Earlier, when we were discussing tactics and everything, one of the things that you mentioned was programmatic advertising, right? And I believe we can agree that this was a game changer,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the B2B business, right?
Yep.
How do you guys adapt programmatic advertising to an industry that is B2B and has all the peculiarities that the agri industry has?
Yeah. I think the first thing to understand is that our audience is not growable, right? Nobody, I shouldn't say nobody. I'm sure there's a couple, but it is a rarity for somebody to go decide they're going to go buy 1,500 acres and start planting corn, or that they're going to go buy 50 head of beef cattle and start expanding in that space. It just is not oftentimes the case. And so, really, I think the key to utilizing programmatic is the quality of your data. And so there are some great partners out there who have first party data and access to information that allows you to feel confident that your programmatic efforts are reaching your right audience and that you can aggregate that data in a much more specific way to say, hey, I am only reaching 500 plus acre growers or 50 head plus producers, whatever that looks like, that you're not just saying anyone who grows a row crop, because that is also not likely. So finding those people who have that quality data or able to aggregate that is really, really important in your programmatic efforts. I think the other is to kind of feel comfortable with not being contextually adjacent, even though I will advocate for contextual targeting frequently. Contextual targeting in ag is really far more effective when you just partner with our niche ag books and their websites. They already have that high quality content. Contextual relevancy, I think, is still very important, and I think that should be a component. But it's getting okay that recognizing that you might serve a pre-roll ad to someone who is watching the highlight of, Caitlin Clark for the University of Iowa in the final NCAA game. Like, those are also things that likely, especially in Iowa with our growers, they're probably checking into that because they have personal lives and personal passions as well. So removing that contextual relevancy, you got to get a little comfortable with that as well. So I think that the key components is just recognizing that, like, one, you can use it, but the really big part about it is how do you find the people who have the data to make it worth using? Because the worst thing you can do is assume, like, oh, well, they're a farmer, so they like NASCAR and they like home improvement and all these, I don't know, they like hunting, all the things, fishing. I use that example all the time. That describes my dad, and he lives in like an urban, neighborhood in the Des Moines metro area, and he's not a farmer and he will never be a farmer. And so you have to really rely on data quality.
And data is the next thing I want to ask you about. First, just following up in this question, how do you find this data? How do you find the people with the data?
Yeah, I think oftentimes your ag publishers are going to be a great way to find this. They have that; they're like the king of first party data there. And so they are starting to integrate a lot of programmatic options and opportunities. So working with them to figure out how to leverage their data programmatically, they likely have solutions in place already or are starting to move into that space. I think the component to it that is interesting is we run programmatic in-house. We work with a DSP, and our team is trained to run that. And then we also partner with media. So sometimes we'll kind of pit them against each other to say, hey, we might be utilizing things like NAICS codes to determine a really qualified audience, or doing hyperlocal mapping to determine a qualified audience, versus utilizing first party data like a publisher. And we'll run both tactics and look at the results, and look beyond the click. What was the time on page? How many pages did they visit? What was your bounce rate? What was the quality of the traffic you drove outside of just the volume of traffic? And so understanding the complexity of how programmatic works is important, but also recognizing how to keep your publishing partners accountable for quality results utilizing their programmatic, because you feel sophisticated enough in it, is really important too.
We can understand that data analysis is essential to define your strategies and tactics, right? How do you, and I hope I'm not being repetitive here, but how do you use this data analysis to optimize digital and media strategies for your customers, especially considering the diverse needs that you'll find in the agriculture world
Yep.
and the specific industries within agriculture.
I can tell you how we're doing it today, but I think it's going to look really different 6 months from now. The dissolution of cookies and the cookie consent that is being implemented across, websites
Hmm.
is really diluting the volume of data we're getting, which means it's not always painting the clearest picture of data we used to get, right? So before that, it was really easy to say, hey, if we drove, I don't know, let's just say for easy math, 500 clicks, I could go to Google Analytics and understand the quality of those 500 clicks. And I could look between tactics to say, programmatic was working really well, or this e-blast worked really well, or partnering with so-and-so's e-newsletter. And I could look and try and compare apples to apples. Well, now we're not getting the full picture of data with those cookie consent forms. So, a lot of what we're doing is trying to evaluate how does traditional marketing principles and measurements translate into a world where we have maybe only 30% of the total picture because of that. So we are and do analyze data monthly for our clients. We try and do a lot of data normalization as well, so that we're not always able to compare apples to apples, but maybe it's apples to oranges and oranges to kiwis. Like we're still in fruit as we're comparing data, if you will, with that analogy. Um, you know, we can do the best with what we have, but also just understanding that like marketing principles have remained the same. And it's really interesting. We have what's called the melting pot, and it's one of our founders actually started writing these bulletins about marketing principles and how marketing works and how to leverage your audience and how to move the needle. And if you read some of those, I mean, think about them, they're 100 years old. They still like ring so true today. And so it's the mix of just understanding marketing principles, utilizing data, utilizing as much as you have and can, and finding that right blend and balance.
First, yes, basic principles in marketing they stay up to date, and we face this. Although most of the ad efforts that we do are for ourselves to promote our content, you need to be all the time trying to understand what's going on with cookies or with what's the word I'm looking for, algorithms or anything. Like they are changing all the time, and that impacts directly how you're determining, sorry, how you're choosing uh, the places where you're investing your money for the advertising and the results you might get from those. And we can see this even in content performance for us. Like some algorithm changes, then we need to understand, okay, what's changing now? Is, I don't know, maybe a platform launched a new media format or a new way to deliver the content, and they're trying to prioritize that. Then they take all of your effectiveness on a different communication tool. For example, when Instagram brought Reels, because of TikTok, basically they started, okay, this is what we want to boost here. So all the impact that you would have before with I don't know, static images in the timeline, blah blah, it just dropped. And then the Reels was the big thing. And if your team is not, if you don't have a team, if you don't partner with an agency that is aware of the changes that are are happening in terms of technology, or if you don't have someone within the company, it can get really hard to to keep a good performance, because like if you don't the world and the technologies are changing, you need to change with them, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I think this is like the year of finally like formal cookie disillusionment and AI usage, generative AI usage. I mean, machine learning's been in place for those who have worked on the advertising and website side for a very long time. So, more specifically generative there, but it's, yeah, I said it earlier, but sometimes it feels like you're drinking from a fire hose to try and keep up.
We talked about lots of different tactics, right, and things and marketing, and all of that requires money. You need to have some money to spend. You need to choose where you're putting your dollars, right? We're in a scenario where budgets are every time more limited, and that's a common challenge for companies in general. How do you prioritize investments in digital and media for your customers?
Great question. Yeah, budget is always such a dance, right? And I think every year you deliver high quality results, the stronger that appetite gets for your client, and they want more. They get hungry for it. But not always do we see the budget increase to support that. And so it puts us in a position to constantly evaluate that data and saying how and where are we getting the most bang for our buck that is really achieving goal X, KPI Y for our client. I think that's the really the root of it. I will say, a lot of those budget constraints have led us to use less quote unquote traditional methods to target our audience. It's a big reason we moved away from print over time. That's such a premium, and I won't diminish the value of that by any means. I believe there's still a lot of that, but it has to help us reevaluate where they're getting the most value to achieve their goal. And if their goal is brand awareness, brand visibility, like, you have to sometimes invest in those places. But, if their goal is lead generation, print's not going to do that. And so I think it's marrying data and results and the medium type and aligning that with goals. And I think that's the best way you can be most effective with a budget.
Yes. When we, following up in this conversation, when we were having our pre-recording discussing like what we're going to be the topics we would be discussing today, the main focus would be was the bandwagon dilemma, right? uh, I wanted you to explain us a little bit better what's the bandwagon dilemma, and if you could share some case study of a successful implementation that you did for a customer, on that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think the bandwagon dilemma is I see my competitor doing it, or I saw one of my favorite brands doing it, and I want to do it too. And I think um, that's where we had discussed earlier. It's so important to just say, like, but is that accomplishing what the goal we set out to achieve at the beginning of the year really was? And I think a great example of this is the connected TV, over the top TV space right now. It's just booming, right? Like, it's left linear TV in the dust. It's only increasing. It's a very fragmented space, and new streaming TV providers are coming out daily. Not really daily, but it feels like it sometimes.
Yeah.
And so uh, I have a lot of clients being like, I want to run TV ads. I can finally do it. But really, again, it's about saying, hey, yes, this is a programmatic space. So how do we apply really high quality targeting to serve that video content? Because foundationally, that is really what it is. And so there's been a handful of campaigns recently where we've said, okay, you have an appetite for it. It aligns with your KPIs and your goals for campaign X or promotion Y. Let's give it a go. And then it's about finding that high quality data so that we're not serving a connected TV ad to my dad, who watches a ton of that content I mentioned earlier that is assumed for farmers. But instead, we know we're actually reaching the right grower or the right producer with that. And so it's been fun to get the analytics back. It's also, a little bit of a reminder of marketing principles, because we're looking at, video views and video completion rate. You're not clicking on it. And so it's just reminding them that you can't always measure and evaluate things in a way that you are maybe more comfortable doing with a banner ad or a Facebook ad, for example.
Shannon, we're getting to the end of our conversation here. So we're gonna have a wrap up now. My last question, like more business related question, is if I want to ask if you have any advice for professionals listening to us, marketing managers, marketing directors, people that work with media and communication in the agriculture, if they're looking to enhance their digital and media strategies. One piece of advice for them to as a takeaway.
Just be hungry. Be okay drinking from the fire hose. Be okay learning and trying and understanding, try and feel okay with the uncomfiness that goes with that, because over time it will become comfortable. I think that's my best advice. I know that's really loose, like I'd love to say, like, if you follow these 5 steps, you'll be a programmatic expert or a ag advertising expert in no time. But I think the more that you just try and learn and absorb and ask smart questions, being hungry for what you should be doing, is the best way to get there.
Awesome. Now, one piece of advice for someone starting their career, a person that is entering um, in the ag industry and focusing in communication and marketing. What should they do?
Yeah. So interesting, and I didn't share this out the gate. I didn't originally have an ag background, and so I took the first job I could get out of college at an agency, and I just took every opportunity with the fact that this could be really powerful for my career at some point. And when you start out, you might think, I don't want to be doing this, or I didn't really see myself in this role, and you're really just trying to go find and bite at the next thing that you thought really checked that box. But instead, really try and sit in the opportunity you've been given and try to discern value from it. Try to understand what fills your cup professionally. And then, that gives you the foundation to try and chase really where you want to go.
Any books, podcasts, movies, documentaries recommendation for the audience?
I have a ton of different, I guess, specifically for ag resources that I use, different podcasts, everything like that. But I will say one that I've really appreciated that doesn't have an ag lens, that has helped me better understand the landscape, is Basis Technology. Go check out their blog. They have a lot of learning centers as well. They are, some of the upper echelon in programmatic. And our partnership with them has been instrumental in our ability to navigate the programmatic space for B2B. And so I think that starting with some of that, if you're really kind of uncomfy with programmatic, where it feels really foreign still, they've got a ton of great resources.
That's Basis Technology?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. I'll check out. Awesome. That was all for today. Now we just, if you want to share with our customers, no, sorry. Now, if you want to share with our audience where they can find you online.
Yeah. So LinkedIn is obviously a great place, and then certainly through our website at Lessing-Flynn.com. I certainly would love to chat with anyone who is looking to learn more or potentially utilize some of our services.
Awesome. Shannon, thanks a lot for taking the time for our conversation today. I took a lot of great insights. I'm sure the audience also did. For everyone that is there listening to us, thanks for staying with us until now. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks, everyone, and have a good week.
Thanks so much, everyone.